Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. In today's episode, I interview Mike, my photographer. I'm not pronouncing his last name because I know I'm going to say it wrong. For the longest time, I called him Mike Chajecki, but that is not his last name, so I'm going to let you listen to him explain how to pronounce his last name. Oh my goodness, Mike, I am so terribly sorry. But Mike, he is the photographer that I've been working with for several years now to capture the interior spaces that we design. We have had multiple publications from the photos that he's taken for us, and he is just such a great personality and a fountain of knowledge when it comes to photography and photo shoots. I know that you will enjoy this episode because you can hear straight from a photographer what you need to do to ensure that your photo shoot runs smoothly and you get the shots you need. For now, I want you to listen to Mike, our photographer, share all the wisdom. Enjoy. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. There is literally nothing better than staying in my abode all-day PJs, all day. These beauty, buttery, soft pajamas come in 3 fabulous colors, and trust me, you will never want to take them off. Check them out at lovemyabode.com and type in Resilient10 to get $10 off your very first order. Okie dokie, I am here with Mike, who just corrected me on the pronunciation of his last name, which I've been pronouncing wrong all year long, all the years.
Everyone is, yes, that's all right.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Mike Chajecki. I'm a photographer specializing in interior design and lifestyle photography. My background actually is in graphic design, strangely enough. That's what I studied in school in Toronto. I worked for a bunch of print shops, different type of magazines. One of my last jobs as a graphic designer, full-time graphic designer jobs, was working for, I don't know if you remember Bennix and Company.
No.
Do you remember? They are like Kitchen Stuff Plus, like, remember Bowring and Stokes, maybe?
Oh,
Bombay and Company?
Bowring.
See, that's my Polish.
Not
accent.
Bowring. Oh, yeah. You Polish man.
Boomerang.
I remember getting Christmas presents at Bowring for my mom because there was like the Young Eglinton Center that I could rollerblade to, was like the only shop close to where I lived. And so I would go there, and that's where I would buy like, accents, like always like really kitschy, like candle holders and stuff like that for Christmas. So yeah, is that not, I guess it's not around anymore.
No. So what happened was I was there for about 3-4 years. I was doing packaging there, packaging design for all across all the stores. And so basically how I got into photography was there was a freelance photographer there that used to shoot for packaging. And I used to design. So we worked very closely. So I designed the packaging, the freelance photographer styled and did the photography.
Cool.
Eventually she just got tired of it. She's like, I can't do this. She was more of a documentary photographer. And she's like, do you want to do this? And I'm like, well, maybe I can give it a go. And one thing led to another. I built a studio in their office. We had a full styling place where we could photograph everything for packaging. And they're like, this photography thing is much, much interesting than sitting at a desk all day and designing. So, from there, the photographer that actually got me into that, she also was working with Toronto Maple Leafs and Toronto Sun. So she got me to work with the NHL for a couple of years. That was kind of cool.
What? That's so cool. What did you do for the NHL?
I mostly photographed their events. As well as there was a NHL awards in Toronto. I think they did for a bunch of years. So we used to photograph every time a hockey player would get a trophy or would get something, some type of a award. We would photograph them all in film. This is going back, like 2000.
Wow.
2001 or something like that.
You're dating yourself just a tad.
Yes.
Film, what's that?
That's right. So,
Cool.
Yeah. And after that, I actually dove into wedding photography for quite a while. That was a big portion of my education. It was, and I recommend this to any photographer that's looking ever to photograph anything and be any type of a photographer. Do some kind of a wedding if you can, because that's the best school. It's probably the scariest. It's most challenging. You're working under different conditions all the time. So, yeah. And after that, I switched into interior design and was working.
Okay, hold on. That's kind of a big jump, I feel like. Now, I don't know a lot, but I feel like
Yes.
weddings, I did have a wedding, so I understand a little bit what that's like. That's like totally chaos, on your feet, evenings and weekends, probably just mostly weekends.
Yeah.
And then the
traveling.
switch to travel. So like, tell me, it's just so interesting. Part of also what I love about this podcast is just learning people's different career paths, right? Because I think it's always really encouraging to see that we can all have many lives and we can have multi passions. And you went from weddings, which is, I would imagine, an extremely intense experience with like super high stakes. Not that interiors doesn't have high stakes, but can you just like explain, how did you make that transition? Because I feel like that's a big jump.
Yeah, it was completely accidental. My wife, she worked with a lady that was in a running room with an interior designer, Gabrielle Pizzali, that she still has an office in Mississauga. And they were, they're on their average run during the week. And she said, "Oh, you know what? I'm really looking for a photographer." And my wife's friend, she's like, "Well," she said, "my friend her husband is a photographer." And she said, "Well, okay." And I've obviously never photographed an interior ever, aside from like at a wedding, at a hall or something, right? And she said, "Okay, well, can you connect us both?" And she did. And she kind of trusted me to do it, even though I had nothing to show for. So, we did our first photo shoot. It went well. Back then, it was a different style of photography. We had lights on. We had no idea what we were doing. This is going back.
Was it like wide angle, like real estate photography? Oh my God.
Of course, yes. It was all that. It was a beautiful space, actually. So it was kind of easier to shoot. But there was a lot of natural light coming in from one side. So it was very difficult to balance. And I had very little experience with that. Every time you shoot portraiture, you kind of want a little more dramatic light. So you like shadows. But interior photography, shadows, they shape things, but you got to control them. So light is extremely important. So that's why you see a lot of people just turn lights on, because that gives you lights all over the room. But now you're working with different light temperatures. It can be quite challenging. So that it went well. But if I go back to it, and Gabrielle and I, we found those images from well over 10 years ago. I don't know, 13 years ago, something like that. And we're not going to look at them again anytime soon. Grim reminder.
That's so interesting. Like, hearing you say that has got me thinking about how, just like interior design and just like fashion, styles change in photography. And Absolutely. I've never given it a thought in my entire life. And I think that's so interesting to hear. Like, it's so true. Right now, everybody wants like all the lights off. Don't use the pot lights, natural light, very fresh light and white. Whereas back in the day, it was all the lights are on, it's warm, it's glowy, it's inviting. It's so interesting to see that. And now I can especially appreciate why you need to update and continually to photograph new spaces, because without even knowing it, your old spaces, even if the decor is timeless, the photography style might have changed. It's interesting.
Yeah, I remember, about 10 years ago, maybe, when filters start to appear in photography, digital filters, as we have them on phones right now, and, Instagram, all that. people started using them because they had a really kind of cool look. It was a quick to edit. But, 4 years went by, 5 years went by. I was like, oh, this is dated now. You know that this was shot with this type of filter on top of it. So it really dates it. I think timeless photography is when you use natural light, don't use any filters, keep everything as clean as possible. You can look at a photograph from 15, 20 years ago if it was shot that way. And there were some that, that are timeless, and same with any type of photography. Definitely photography changes as fashion does. And if you can help it, try to shoot as natural or neutral as possible,
Totally.
And, the biggest obstacle I used to come across is that when we started working with a new designer, they wanted lights on. They wanted to showcase, there's a light on top of this artwork. There's a line in the cabinetry. There's a light near the backsplash. Like, we just want to feature where we put all the lights. I can understand that.
I'm so guilty of that, even to this day. And even when I know that that's not going to, because it's like we put our heart and soul into designing these spaces, and those lights, I'm picturing those vintage sconce lights I found for my own kitchen that they're not installed yet, but I'm thinking, I just want to highlight because how the space looks when the lights are on. And we're trained as designers to value layers of lighting and accents and task lighting. And so we want to showcase it. But the reality is it doesn't always show up well in a photograph.
Yeah, sporadically will show up well. Anytime you're working with different type of light temperatures, they tend to shift color. It's a nightmare for a photographer to balance it all. That's why we try to use one type of light temperature. There are ways around it if you want to put some accent lights here and there, but to just turn all the lights on and just have at it is.
I'm pretty sure I made you do that at my house. I'm sure I made you do a few things. You're like, I don't think this is a good idea, Rebecca. For Sarah, in Sarah's bedroom, there's this beautiful flush mount, crystal, very expensive sort of flush mount chandelier thing. And it's gold and it's pink and it's so soft. And then when we photographed it without the light on, it just looked flat. Yeah. So you entertained me, and we were able to get it dimmed, fortunately. Yeah. And then you were able to do the multiple exposure, all those tricks, things that you do. And it looks phenomenal, and the pictures look beautiful, and I can't wait to share them. But yeah, sometimes you do kind of need a little of that. Okay, we digress because I want to hear more about before we dive into all the tips and tricks, because I know you have so many. So now you don't do weddings. Let's just finish that thread.
No, it's been about it's been about 8 to 10 years, something like that. I would say.
And you had, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you had a studio, but then you also had a team, did you not? You had a team of people. You were a big operation.
I had a studio in Whitby. That was awesome. And it was great because people come in for meetings, It definitely was the right move at the time. And I had a couple of photographers that were photographing. We would do pretty big weddings. Sometimes we had 600 people at a wedding. That was, one photographer was not able. There was elephants at weddings and
what?
Oh yeah, we had elephants.
Oh my gosh,
horses.
That's so cool.
All kinds. We were, photographing at Porter Airport. We had a session. It was pretty successful. It was really, really good. But I needed a change because I couldn't work weekends all the time, and the summers were very busy. I have 2 daughters now, it was no family life at all. I was working weekends. I did quite a few destination weddings. I was traveling out of the country as well. So it was nice, but at the same time, you're away from what you love as well here at home, right? So it was it was and the kind of so the transition was kind of luck, and just life kind of took over, and just okay, I'll give it a go. I started really enjoying it. I started photographing the space as I got a little bit better, the same way as I used to photograph certain items for packaging. I just started styling things. Styling rooms, and I started getting smaller images, just tighter images, vignettes of different parts of the room. And that wasn't that popular that many years ago. People just shot wide, right? So that was kind of cool. I think a lot of designers really liked it. It was something a little bit new. I don't want to say I invented it because there's a lot of photographers doing something similar, but it was, it caught a lot of other designers' eye and kind of got the ball rolling,
And I'd love for you to share what you told me. So we did a photo shoot for those of you listening. We did a 2-day shoot in Muskoka last week, which was so much fun. And we got to talking for hours and we talked about everything under the sun. But one of the things that you said that really stuck with me, and you talked about how being a wedding photographer really prepares you for any area of photography you want to go into. Do you want to just kind of remind me or like share with our audience what you said? Because I think it adds value. And I think for designers looking to hire a photographer to hire their spaces, because not everyone listening here is in Toronto and can hire you, Mike, as much as I'm sure they'd love to. But like, I think that finding someone who has had experience working in weddings is a benefit. And maybe you can share what you told me.
I think it's probably the best school in photography. If you do enough of them, I've shot hundreds of weddings throughout the years. So, as a wedding photographer, you're shooting fashion, you're shooting portraiture, you're shooting interiors, you have mixed light constantly. You're in and out of different rooms, you're in and out, indoors, outdoors. You're shooting product, you're shooting rings, you're shooting dresses, you're photographing food. The spectrum of photography in one day is like no other thing. You're doing everything within 8, 10, 12 hours. You're shooting an event at the end, essentially, as well. And you're doing a journalistic work. So it's very demanding, and there's no room for mistakes. Like, you cannot make a mistake because there's no second shot of that. There's no second walk down the aisle. There's no second first kiss, if you will, right? So, extremely stressful, high pace, job, if you will. And very, very demanding on the body as well, because you're constantly working. Like, there's no downtime. You're moving, you're driving, you're following limos, you're making sure that all the family members are there. So that type of photography is extremely demanding. And then when you switch to anything else, you feel like you have such a good background. You feel like you have, I can tackle this, So, I think it's a best training. And I advise this to all starting photographers, that if you're looking to do something, but you can't get there right now, go second shoot a wedding with someone. Train yourself and see what they're doing and how they light things and how they work. That will be so much more beneficial to your future photography sort of endeavor.
Yeah, well, like in interiors, you're capturing not just a room, you're capturing like a vignette, a little close-up tight shot of flowers on a coffee table. You're capturing the designer in their space. So there's portrait there, maybe fashion. On our recent shoot, you were taking these like moody pictures of my design associate, Rebecca. It was hilarious. I loved it. I can't wait to see it. It's fun. Okay, so let's get into interior design photography.
Yes.
Everyone is here ready to hear all the things you have to share. I don't know, like, where do we start? I feel like we had a conversation last week and we talked about everything. We went in like all these a million tangents. I have a million notes of so many nuggets of wisdom when it comes to shooting interior spaces. And I guess I just wanted to share in today's podcast, how to help designers plan and execute a really smooth, successful photo shoot. That, in the end, they'll have really great photos that represent their brand, of course, that they can use to pitch and get published and really to attract clients, because ultimately that's what this is all about. Yeah. So do we want to start with like, I don't know, what do you want, like mistakes people make or big questions you get asked? Or
I think maybe we could start with, how do you choose an interior design photographer?
Yes, that's a good question.
How do you do it? How do you know if it's a right fit? There's a few ways you can go about it. And I strongly recommend, before even contacting a photographer, you could definitely see on Instagram who's using, which photographer in the city here, or anywhere really. And, you can give a designer a quick message. Oh, you work with, with Mike, or you work with, whoever else. How did you like it? How was the process? I think there's a lot of transparency, and I think a lot of people will be able to share their experiences. So that's sort of one way of finding out, how the photo shoot went. Were they happy with the process? Were they happy with the work? Were they happy with, did you get along on the shoot? So, that's huge, because a big part of it is communication. Big part of it is working together. Every time I'm on a shoot, we work together very closely. We review every single image. We style. We share our opinions, and that's at the end is what makes those images that much better. So that's definitely one approach. So research your photographer very well. Give them a call. I get emails all the time, but an email is great, but it doesn't get you all the information. I mean, I can definitely send you pricing and a little bit of information on it, but give a photographer a call. See how they sound,
Totally. If you can get along, you can tell immediately in a conversation if this person is cut from the same cloth or someone who might be hard. Like, there are people out there that don't blend well together, right? And you don't want to have to work with that person closely for a 12-hour, 8-hour, 5-hour day, whatever it might be.
And or your whole career as an interior designer. Because another thing that I find is that's quite important is if you have a photographer, it's not a bad idea to stick and work with them, because a photographer will have a certain style. And then when you start switching a lot of photographers or every shoot or every second shoot, your portfolio is starting to, although it may look phenomenal, but it will look a little bit different. You could say that one photographer has this particular space, another photographer has shot this particular space. And I see it on people's websites. I see it on Instagram and other.
Oh my gosh, that would be such a cool TV show, maybe just for designers to watch, but where you could hire a bunch of, I'm like the woman of ideas, where you could hire a bunch of, or not hire, if it's a TV show, they probably won't pay you, but bring on a bunch of photographers to shoot like one space, but they're all doing it on different days and they can't see what the other photographers are doing. And then to see at the end, everyone has a different perspective and like they'll all be beautiful, but different. Anyways, I'm just like geeking out there. I'm like, oh, that would be kind of cool. I thought about doing that. I'm like, I should hire someone to do the space and hire someone else. I'm like, that's expensive. I'm not going to do that.
Yes, definitely. It's a pricey test, no doubt. But it's I think it's a good idea to get styles. Along with, see if you can get along with someone and work well. They understand your design. As a photographer, I have to learn how you see. Every single person that I work with sees things differently, and they prefer different angles. They prefer different shots. So that's something that I have to learn. And every time I meet with someone, I said, I have to learn how you see. I have to learn how you view things and how you like them and prefer them. And then I kind of cater to that. So with my own style on top of it, but I have to be very flexible in that sense. So make sure that the photographer is a good fit. Once you do find a photographer, what's next? Well, you'll set up a date for a photo shoot. You have it set with your clients as well as with the photographer. And now sort of the big part of the photo shoot begins, which is, getting the space ready for a photo shoot. With yourself, how much styling goes into it, how much things you have to purchase, potentially bring into a photo shoot to make it yours again, right? People move into their spaces and sometimes they make some changes that you may want to change again. And they may not be great for photography. Perfect example is a kitchen where you have so many appliances on a countertop. You could have so many different things people have out, and we have to take that away. Like that's just not great for photography, right? Especially when you get published. And so styling is a huge part of it, and I'm sure you would even have more experience with that than even I.
I mean, for me, styling, when I first started out, I recognized that I needed to like really style things. I got to the client's house. This was my very first client ever on my own after I left working for the other designer. My very first photo shoot, because we never photographed our spaces when I worked for him. And I got to the client's house and it was like months after we were finished. It was an older couple. They're still my favorite people in the world, but they had tchotchkes everywhere. And thankfully I had hired an assistant, and she and I came, and she was amazing. She photographed everything exactly how it was, like every surface, every shelf, and then gently had to remove everything. They were not there, of course, thank goodness. Best not to have your clients there if you can. Yes. And then we brought in so much stuff, and we basically restyled the entire thing. And then she had to like gingerly put everything back exactly how we found it. It was exhausting.
Yeah. And that's just the beginning. That's the part where you're not even get a shot yet. Like, this is all the work that you do that could take days. You know, you have to go into the stores. Maybe you have some of your own things that you can bring into a photo shoot. But this is a couple of days of work prior to the photo shoot, right?
Would you say, I'm curious your opinion, I've never asked you this, but would you say that shoots go smoother when they've brought in a lot of styling props? Or no, not necessarily? Does that slow you down? Because it's like, oh, I need to get it perfect.
Yes. I'm all about perfection. And that's, we can go back to another point where shoot what you need, and shoot as much or as little as you need. Don't overshoot. So, but just to sort of answer your question, it's good to have flexibility in what you can style with. It's good to have a lot of items. I mean, don't go, crazy, but you can definitely have a good amount. And designers are, they know the space. They've designed the space. They know what will fit. But sometimes when we're on a photo shoot, I'll take a picture of the room that we're not shooting in, and it looks like the warehouse. There's everything's on the floor. There's paper
awful.
Everywhere, bags everywhere, items all over the floor, beds, chairs, whatever it may be. So, be prepared.
And you have to prep your client. Like, this is a whole other topic, but if they are going to be there, even if they're not, they have cameras, these clients in their houses, they're going to check in. Let's be honest, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's stuff everywhere, and it always looks like a mess. And so you've got to let them know so that they don't freak out when they see like bags all over this beautifully new, I don't know, their bed was made perfectly, and on top of their bed are like bags of like LT accessories or home goods or whatever it might be.
It's we're turning their house into a photo studio, and I think that's a lot of times it's not really understood. Even when the clients come in, sometimes on a shoot, halfway through our photo shoot, they're like, "Oh, I had no idea this takes this long, and there's so much work into it." They're just mesmerized. So
I know, they have no idea.
They have no idea. They think we'll be in.
I remember when you did the Jarvis shoot. We recently did a condo downtown, and the clients were there. They were lovely. Like, of all the clients, they actually were guests on this podcast.
Ooh,
did you listen? You should go back and listen to that, because you met them and chatted with them. They're so amazing. Go back and listen to it. I don't know the episode. I'll have to look it up. It was the only time I've interviewed clients for the podcast. But anyways, they came out. We were like, we're going to start in the living room, right?
Yes,
and they came out like an hour and a bit later, and we're like, we're still working on the first shot. And I thought, they must think this is bananas.
Oh yeah, they were. That's the standard sort of reaction that we get. I think the real estate photography kind of switch that a little bit. People think that you can come in and just shoot a room, take a picture of a room, move on to the next room, lights on, keep the bathroom lights on, photograph it, and move on. You can do a full space, full home in about an hour or two. That's not the type of photography we're doing. We're we're styling everything. We're making sure that light is perfect. Essentially, it's a studio space, and not everyone's kind of ready for it, but that's
also, I think the style that interior photographers are doing now is like editorial, right?
Oh, very much so.
It's like what you would see in a magazine. Even if you have no interest in being a magazine, you don't want to pitch a magazine, those are the types of shots that we're taking. I had a family friend who had just moved to Canada show me his portfolio a few years ago, and he's like, oh, I want to get into interior photography. Here's some examples of my work from Italy. And it was real estate. It was wide angle. And I thought, how do I tell him that that's not the style?
Yes.
Because it's not capturing the essence of the whole home. It really isn't. It's about capturing beautiful shots that tell a beautiful story.
Yeah, details are very important in the design. We want to show textures, fabric, correct color. We want to show, different vignettes of design where you can come in much closer and show the detail. Mm-hmm. That's not what real estate photography or that type of photography is designed for. So very big gap between real estate photography. It might as well be fashion and interior and real estate and interior. It's a completely different approach, Yeah. A lot of times in real estate, they don't even use tripods. No, exposures. It's just quick. You're just going through the space,
Yeah.
Which I get it. It's usually just for sale, right? I mean, I get it. But we have a completely
different purpose. It's a totally different purpose. Real estate is to show as much detail as possible, right? Because you're trying to attract the widest possible audience because you want to sell the house. Whereas interiors is about those special details that we spend so much time on so we can show our clients. And it's so funny. Back to your point that you said earlier, where you said like getting to know a designer and everyone is slightly different in what they look for and the types of shots they like and what they want to focus on. I feel like even at our recent shoot, I was like, Mike, I need to get the Roman shape. You're like, what's the deal with all the fabric? And I'm like, I don't care. Not that I don't care about the architecture. That's not true. But I'm like, I am not. And I mean, I can do the architectural side and it's beautiful, but I love fabrics and furniture. And I've made a conscious choice in my own business to go after more decorating jobs, right? Because I've learned that that's actually where I can make the most money and have the most fun. So I'm always like directing you and like, you got to get those curtains. I want to see the detail on the couch, on the arm. And probably there's other designers that really want more of the architectural features.
Yes.
But it's being intentional with those shots. And this is something that I'm going to share more of, going forward in that workshop that we're doing, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but is like really understanding your brand and those details that you want to capture and not caring so much what everyone else is doing. Like if you want to do a lot of custom upholstery, well, shoot, you better make sure that that's the focus of some of your shots so that you can start to attract clients that value that. If all your shots are showing fireplaces, like we did that, the Silverbirch shoot. I'm like, I don't care about the fireplace. You kept like framing out the fireplace. I'm like, I'm never going to use this shot, right? Do you remember that?
Yes.
I'm like, it's not my style. I'm not going to use the shot. It is beautiful, but first of all, I also didn't build the fireplace regardless. But I was like, I need to capture the pillows, the chair, the detail on the back of the chair. Like that is something that I now recognize I need to kind of push for, photographing the things that I want to do more of.
Yeah, and that comes back to the point where I said that I have to, as a photographer, have to learn what's important to you and how you see things. When I come into a space, I've never seen that space before. You've seen it hundreds of times. You've designed it. You know it inside and out. So for me to come in and have the same understanding as you do is really impossible immediately. So that's why I'm like, okay, we usually do a little walk around and see, what's important and what we photograph. And each job may be different. Maybe one job didn't have that much fabric in it. Maybe had more tile in it. Maybe had more flooring in it with just some furniture, So very important to have a good communication between the photographer and the designer, because essentially it's my job to put, have the images, create the images that you have in your head of the space that you've designed. And so that's why, working together.
Do you find that's like, is that hard sometimes?
Of course.
Because the designer is so invested in everything. Like I know at the beginning, I was invested in everything because I'd picked every detail and I wanted to capture everything.
Yes.
Like I don't know. How is that as a photographer on the other end of that? When designers are pushing to capture this, and then I also want to capture that. Do you ever have to say, okay, we need to prioritize, or like how do you maneuver through that?
The one of the biggest challenges, especially with new interior designers, is that we tend to overshoot. We should try to get as much details as possible and many spaces. And I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think we should focus on key images, key parts of each space, and photograph it really well. Instead of getting, 8, 12 images out of a living room, maybe 5 are much more, realistic, take less time, and these are the images that you will use. If you're going to shoot 10 images of one space or 12 images in a space, probably half of them will never see the light of day. They're going to be just collecting space on your hard drive, and you have to pay for them. And I feel that you can really cut the photo shoot time, I don't know, maybe even in half if you decide to, if we photograph it correctly. If we come in and say, you know what, we have 5 images from a living space, and that's all we really need. And if you'd like to, and I think you brought up a good point once, that with iPhones right now, with your phones, have it on you. And if you want these extra shots, photograph it. They could be a little, for your Insta stories. They could be just for your own reference to show your clients what kind of, design that you did, that you want to show, maybe a tile up close. And that's another part where you can feel free to photograph your own few images during a shoot, because we don't necessarily need, you don't need a photographer to capture that, and pay for it. Because it is an expense. I mean, it is. And if we can minimize that and still get great work, I think it's very important. And I was guilty of it too. I wanted to capture as much as possible. Yeah. When you go back many, many years ago, but I realized that I've never seen it. Where are those images that I photographed? They're not on your website. They're not on your Instagram, but they're on your hard drive. So you've shot, 12 images of a room, but you've only used 5 or 4 or 6, so that's, be selective, definitely be selective.
Yeah. And be intentional. I think that what you said before, is focus on, you said something, I wrote it down, but focus on this, focus on just the photos that you need and that you're going to use, and be intentional. For the longest time, I would just try to capture everything. And then I realized, okay, my design aesthetic, I like to use color. And so at the time I was like, I need to make sure that every shot I take has something with a pop of color. And I mean, you've maybe seen this with me as well. Yes. I use a little less color than I used to, but it's certainly something that I made a conscious choice of. And I thought, this shot, is it something that will look good on my Instagram feed? Let's be honest, because it does matter. Also, is it something that I would want to put on my website and I would want to do more of? That's the big thing. Because for the longest time, I just captured everything. And then I started to realize, some of the projects I did were not my dream design aesthetic. They were not my dream client. And I actually made a choice not to photograph a few projects a few years back. I mean, it still happens today, because I thought, it's going to cost me money, and I don't want to attract more clients who want to do this type of work, because it doesn't light me up. And so that was hard, because I know the clients were like, aren't you going to photograph it? And that can be, talking to clients about this stuff can be challenging, but ultimately it's your business. You're the one footing the bill. You have to make sure that you photograph the spaces that you think are going to help move the needle and showcase attract those clients that you want.
No, definitely. I think it's a very important point. And like you said, it is expensive. You don't need to shoot every single space that you design. And you don't need to shoot every single part of the design in the space as well. We can get a lot of, great shots that will show very well, that you can showcase on your website, on your Instagram. And they really, people have a good understanding of what the space is. When you think about it, if you have a living room, you can definitely shoot it in 4 or 5 shots. That's plenty. You don't need, like I said,
that's a lot. Yeah.
That's quite a bit. Yeah. And another thing is, don't be afraid to tell. I find that quite often is that, designers, my clients almost don't want to hurt my feelings in some way. That's if they won't tell me that they don't like it. And I always tell them, tell me if you don't like something. I have no ego. If you're going to tell me that you don't like this, we can either change it, we can work into something else. It's totally okay. This is something that we both are working on, and we should make it as bad of images as possible. So I can't stress this enough, extremely important to have good communication and being honest.
Oh my God, yeah.
You have to be, I want you to be proud of those images, and I want to be proud of them. When you showcase them on your Instagram feed or on your website, I want to be I want to be proud of it, and I want you to be proud of it as well. So very, very important. So tell your photographers, I don't like this. I don't want to see this part in it. Be honest with them, and and again, going back to a good fit with who you're working with.
Yeah.
They should be flexible. They should be understanding of it. And that way you build the best images you can, because it is quite a bit of work. And if you work well together, you'll be much happier at the end.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think especially for designers who've maybe had a few photo shoots and they kind of know what you're talking about, because I've been there where, most of us are people pleasers, and we're in the business of making our clients happy. And it's not unlike, designing something for a client and them trying to, bulldoze us or push us in one direction or another, and us being afraid to speak up and tell them why we don't think it's going to work. Right. A lot of us designers who, if anyone's out there like me, were hesitant in the past to sort of say, no, this is what I think works best, and here's why. Same goes for a photo shoot. And I've definitely been guilty of being on a shoot where I was like, I know I can see the photographer's really loving this shot and I'm just not into it. But you know what? They probably know best because they're the professional. I don't trust my gut. We get the shot and it never gets used.
Yeah.
And so that's time. That's, 45 minutes or more of time that we spent on that day that could have been spent capturing something else.
Yeah. And I think I'm doing a great job because you're not telling me that I'm not.
And you don't know. Yeah.
Right? So I'm thinking, I can go back to a similar shot in a different space and might even repeat the same process somewhere else because I had no feedback. Right.
Yeah.
So now it just keeps on multiplying. So, the information that I get, good or bad, is equally important to me. Of course, I want to hear it's a great shot, but I also want to hear that it's not a good shot. I mean, we work on spaces, and we have to understand that not every time I'm going to put a camera and frame something, it's going to be great. So talk to your photographer, and a photographer should talk to a designer as well.
I think even if you're working with a photographer that's like super well known and they're getting published all the time, don't assume that they know what's best for you. It's your money and it's your brand and it's your clients. You're trying to attract clients that are going to pay you money. If you are capturing something that doesn't align with you, it's not going to help you. And the photographer is going to leave and it's not going to make a difference in their life. So you do need to speak up. I mean, I think I speak up. I'll say like, no, it's not working. We'll try it. I always think it's important to listen and try something different, because what I've learned over the years of doing these shoots is that how my naked human eye sees things. The eye is a very different lens, and how we see it is not how the camera sees it. And so I'll go into a shoot and be like, this is what I vision. Like, look at it from this angle. It looks so good. And then you'll put the camera there and you'll try, God love it. You're like, okay, let's try this. And then in your head, you're like, this isn't going to work, but I'll entertain her. And I'm like, yeah, shoot, that's not working. Okay. Like, let's go back to the drawing board and find another shot, because sometimes I do have an idea and I have a shot list. And actually at Muskoka, we had a shot list and I completely forgot to bring it out.
Not that it
matters. We didn't even open it up. But in the past I have, and it helps to guide me, because sometimes the shot you think you can get because you see someone else have it on Pinterest, it just doesn't work in your space. And you have to sometimes just let it go and get creative and find a new shot.
Absolutely. No, I think that's very important that people understand that. And, it's obviously each space is different. A list is a great idea. You don't always have to follow it shot by shot, but because, like you said, we see it completely different with our eyes, and the camera is a completely different, eye. The cameras will, first of all, we see peripheral. We have peripheral vision. We can see depth. Cameras don't really do that. Cameras are they shoot in 2D images. They don't see what's outside of what it's framed. So they don't have that understanding. It's kind of what you show through the lens is what you get. You don't see what's beside it. Well, with our eyes, like, okay, I can see there's a, sofa, there's a table, that, and everything is kind of works in your mind. Okay, that looks really good. But when you start narrowing down on it and you just essentially put a frame around it, it just may not work. So you have to look through the lens to see if an image will work. And now the technology is so good that I can shoot with a laptop. Like, we instantly see it on on a laptop, we can review it, where years ago, you kind of, never mind film, but you had to look at the back of a screen, and that was already like, oh my God, we can see an image instantly. This is fantastic, right? But now we can see it on a 15, 17, 27-inch monitor on the shoot live.
Yeah, game changer.
I can put live view. So when we're styling, I can turn live view on, and we can see what we're moving and how we're building the shot, right? Which is key as well. So we see it instantly, all the changes that we're making. So very, very important to know that too. So it's a bit of trial and error as well. But with experience, I can walk into a space and say, okay, this is definitely one shot that we'll do. This is another, and then we work together on the shots in between as well. So, a photographer should bring some kind of an idea to the table, and then get you a few shots that you may not think about. They may see something differently, and just go over it, review it, talk about it, see it, and make changes if necessary.
So do many designers create a shot list and bring one with them to shoots? Do you find?
No.
Okay.
It barely ever happens. I think their list is in their head, in a sense, which is fine too. It obviously depends on the scope of the shoot. If we're photographing for 2-3 days, a full home is different than we have, a kitchen and a couple bathrooms. But so there's a different level of how organized you have to be when you have a different size of a photo shoot. Some are, it's just like any other industry. Some people are very organized. Some people may be a little bit less organized. I like a shot list, but I don't necessarily need it. I think it's a good idea so we don't miss certain shots, or we think about certain shots. But I don't see it as absolutely crucial. Because there's so many surprises on the way. You might find a shot that it's not even on the list that worked really, really well. So if you like lists, do them. If you hate lists, it's okay. We can still make it work.
What I found is because most of our shoots, we always have them. Muskoka, I forgot to bring it out of the bag. We just kind of jumped right in. But it helps me feel organized as a designer, and it also gives me a more realistic idea, because sometimes when you have the shot list in your head, you don't realize how many shots you're actually hoping to get, and it's too many shots. But when you put pen to paper or you type it up, and I always like to include a little image, just sort of like an inspiration, like I want to make sure that I get, let's say like a little a vertical splice or something, or vignette, or I want a horizontal landscape one for the website. But once I put it to paper, then I can see, like when Rebecca and I did that one for Muskoka, it was way too many shots. We're like, okay, this is going to need to be scaled back. So I think it's a good exercise to have it and as a guide also, so you don't forget something. And I've had that happen on a shoot where we finished the day and I was like, oh my goodness, how did I forget? We didn't capture this one angle that is like super important, and I wanted to shout out some love to my vendor or whatever it might be. Yes. So it's helpful. I mean, it's like anything in life. When you're organized, you can veer from it, but it's nice to have that.
No, absolutely. And again, if it's definitely helpful. Is it 100% necessary? No, we can definitely photograph without it. But if you can't put even a basic list, we would like to photograph, or something that's very important to you. Maybe you want to show certain features of a kitchen. Maybe there's a pull-out bed that you want to show. Just write it down. It will take 5 minutes. But at the same time, don't stress over that. If you don't have it, the photo shoot won't happen. We can make it work. But more prepared you can be, the better, hands down.
Totally.
So yeah. Be prepared.
Oh my gosh, so many things. I'm like writing in mad notes because I'm realizing there's so many more things. But the good news is we can talk about all these things in our workshop that's coming up.
Yeah,
that you are like special guest. I'm so excited because like you love to teach. Who knew?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I taught photography just before COVID, just in local, galleries here in Oshawa where I live. I loved it, and I think that's something that I'll be doing more of. There's so much to cover that we, when it comes to a photo shoot, definitely seasonal times changes as well. So keep in mind that, and that's something we'll be talking in the workshop, how time changes and how much light changes during the different seasons and how long we can shoot. The cost, how we can split the cost with your vendors, minimize your cost for a photo shoot, as well as what else do we have on the list here? And,
also,
consistency of using photographers, seasonal times.
Yeah.
And
I also can't wait to talk more about, who we didn't have time to really get into this today, but like who owns the images and what does that look like? And what is the industry standard and what can a designer expect? Because it's a big topic. Yeah.
Especially when you want to get published. That is a huge topic. That's very divided, I feel. But there's so much more to this to a photo shoot than just kind of meets the eye. And a lot of people, I think it's just a photographer coming with a camera and I'm just going to put a few things and we're going to take quick shots. And understanding how long it takes, right? I've been asked. I got an email recently. It wasn't an interior designer. I think it was a builder actually, and they wanted me to photograph 3 homes in one day, full homes. And I said, that's obviously. They said, do you think a third one is possible? We want 2, but a third one is possible. I said, 1 is definitely possible. We can work with it. But,
oh my God. Oh my gosh.
November or December where you can shoot till 4:00. That's something, in June you can shoot till 7. Another very good, important point is if you have a bigger project to photograph, divide it in 2 days, divide it in 3 days if you can, because photo shoot is very tiring and exhausting. If you can do 2 6-hour days or a 6 and a 4-hour day, you're way better off than doing 1 10-hour day. After 6-7 hours, we're all walking like dead flies.
And one of the mistakes I made that I'm sure designers make, especially when you're starting out, is like you said, trying to get in so many images in the day, but just trying to hustle to get as many images as you possibly can. And then what happened to me is by the end of the afternoon, not only am I anxious because I see that we're losing the light or the client's coming home with their kids or I have to go pick up my kids or whatever it is, I'm anxious and I'm thinking we still have 3 more shots I want to get. Oh my gosh, are we going to get it? And then what happens is I start to care less about the quality of the shot and more about the quantity. And I just want to get it done. And then, what can happen is that those last few shots may not even be, as good as you wanted them to be. You may not end up using them. It's just not as fun of an experience. That's certainly something and a mistake that I've made. And I'm trying to be consciously better. But I get it. It can be expensive. And so for a young designer starting out wanting to invest in photography, because let's be honest, it's an investment. And in the workshop, I'm going to go into so much detail about the money side of it, what it costs. You're going to talk about it too. And I'm going to share really what I invest in marketing every year, what I have invested specifically on photography. I'm going to be an open book and share that because I think it's important to understand. You see these designers getting published and they have all this work, they're spending a lot of money on photography. And not everybody is comfortable with that. And so I can see the desire to squeeze it all into one day. But the reality is maybe you do 2 half days, depending on the photographer's availability. But we did those 2 model homes a couple years ago and we took 4 days. It was 2 days per house. And it was we hustled still and tried to capture as much as possible, but it was less stressful because we knew we had the next day.
Yeah, no, it's
so much better.
Even Muskoka. Remember we walked in and there was no light.
Oh my God, it was snowing. It was the worst. It was overcast.
We had very much of an overcast day. We have big windows, but there's no light coming in. So I have to light everything. Now it takes so much more time to do it. Right? So that's something that's very important as well, that the weather will, and to some point, dictate the length of the shoot as well. If I have to light every single space, every time, every shot, then that will definitely take more time than if we're in a very well-lit space and we can photograph with no additional lights or just with a little bit more lights just to help the space to look better.
Totally.
But, weather plays a huge role. Time of the year plays a huge role. And imagine doing Muskoka in 1 day under those conditions. Impossible, right? We would have, so think about it. If you have a space that maybe has 6 rooms, or 7 or a full floor, definitely a good idea to split it into 2 days. You won't be as tired. I won't be as tired. We'll make better decisions and we'll get better shots at the end.
For sure.
Deal. And essentially, it's the same cost. If you're going to do a 6 and a 4 hour, then a 10 hour in one day, well, it's the same cost, right? So why not go and do that and be rested and get better results at the end?
Yeah, especially like you're already investing. Sometimes it can be feel like a huge chunk of change, and you're already investing that money. So you may as well get the best shots you can and set yourself up for success. And there's so many more factors that affect how many shots you can get. And we're going to talk about those in the workshop because so we've designed this workshop that it's 2 hours, but I think that's not enough time. I was just thinking the other day, I'm like, I feel like I need another hour because you're going to be teaching. And then I've got Margot Austin, and then there's me, and I have so much I want to talk about too, from the client facing side of it and like preparing for the shoot and all the sort of the designer side. So the workshop, for those who are listening, is it November 9th? November 9th?
On Tuesday, yes.
It's live. It's a Zoom. And when you sign up, you do get, it's live. We would like for you to show up live because you can ask your questions. But if you don't, you will get the recording. And you'll have access to the recording, I think, for a week after. So you can watch it again multiple times. If you love everything Mike has to say, you're getting a workbook. We're going to make a workbook and send it to you so you have everything that you can take your notes in. But Mike is going to give you all the teaching because clearly he has so much knowledge. There's so much more to talk about on how to like really hone in and get those shots that you want to get. And I'm just really excited. There's so many, like I have a million more notes that I'm going to add in to the workshop because I'm like, we didn't get to the chance to talk about that. Oh, that makes me think about the other thing. And like, oh my gosh, there's so many factors that affect how many shots you can get in a day, right? It's not just light. Like there's so many other things that I'm like jotting down all my notes. Okay, we're almost
the preparation for both of us, right? We have to be both prepared. What kind of conversation you have prior to the shoot about the space? Do you do a call before a shoot? Do you not do a call before a shoot? How familiar are you with the space? So there's so many things that we can talk about, and we will talk about on
and managing your clients, whether they're there or not.
Yeah, that's huge. And then what do you do after? What happens after the photo shoot? When a photographer leaves, what's the next steps after that? How do you get your images? What's the time frame for your images? And what do you do with them after? Where do you put them? Where do you allocate them to make sure that you get the most out of them? That's
absolutely
huge. And I think Margot will be a very good help.
Absolutely
as well.
Yeah. And Margot, I did a great podcast with Margot. You guys can go listen to it. We just rebroadcast it. When at the time of this recording, you can go and listen to Margot's from last week and hear all of her knowledge when it comes to getting published and all that fun stuff. Okay. Because we're running out of time. Yeah. Do you have any last, I didn't prep you for this. I'm sorry. I'm so funny. I'm like prepped you with everything else. I always forget this. Do you have any last nugget of wisdom that you can share for my listeners?
I guess be prepared for a longer day. If you have quite a bit of a space, make sure you feel comfortable with a photographer. That is, to me, is the most important part. Make sure that the comfort level is there. If that's the case, then your photography will be so much better. We'll be able to communicate better, work better together. I think that is key. Just hiring a designer. Make sure that the communication and it's a right fit, and don't be afraid to talk to other people and find out how they work, what their experience was. I think that is probably the most important. There's a lot of technical things, of course, that come in on a photo shoot, but those things and obstacles can be solved on a shoot. But make sure that the fit is correct. Make sure that you get along with the person that you work with.
It's so true. I mean, I have lots of designer friends in the city, and, we've all worked with different and some similar photographers, and everyone's experience is actually unique. And I've heard 2 designers talk about a photographer that they worked with, and one absolutely loved the experience and works with them all the time. And the other person said, oh, that's so weird to hear you say that. It's so interesting. Like, I didn't feel like we connected, so I'm not going to use them again. And I thought, wow, how interesting. Like, here's a photographer that lots of people are using, and yet we're all still human beings. Oh, yeah. So that would be like, don't forget, don't just use a photographer because you see people on Instagram are all using them. It doesn't mean that they're going to capture your space the way that you want.
Absolutely.
That's something I've learned too.
Yes. No. Yeah. So that's key. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mike, so much. This is so fun. We could clearly talk for hours.
Oh, we could go. We could go more.
There's so much great goodness in all of the, in everything you have to share. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I'm excited to do this workshop with you. And yeah, follow Mike. Where can people follow you and find you?
Definitely Instagram is probably the best tool. Of course, I do have a website, MikeChajecki.com. But Instagram is.
And do you want to spell your last name? Because not everyone knows Polish.
Yes. So it's Mike, and last name is Chajecki. And it's the same for our Instagram. It's Mike Chajecki, and MikeChajecki.com is my website. You can see more work in there, and you can definitely connect through both website and Instagram as well. So, and if you want to, give me a call.
Yes, that's right. You like to get to know a person.
Yeah, I think so. An email is great, but if a phone call can go so much further, and you get a better idea of who you're working with potentially.
I accidentally hit the recording button. I'm so sorry. I cut you off. I think what a bad host. I think it was my first time doing this. No, honestly, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really excited to see you at the workshop, and obviously continue to work with you and have you photograph my spaces. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. It was awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you, Rebecca. All right.
Guys, isn't that so great? Oh my gosh, I could talk to Mike for literally hours. In fact, we did that, just that, on a recent photo shoot north of the city in Muskoka. It was a 2-day shoot. We ended up staying overnight because it's like a 2.5 hour drive from the city. So we stayed overnight at a little local inn, and we ended up talking for hours till like midnight, all about business and life. And he's just such a joy to converse with. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I know there's so much more knowledge where that came from. He is so forthcoming, and he shares his perspectives, and hope that at the very least you got some really great information from this episode to help you run your next professional photo shoot as smooth as a baby's bottom. I don't know, guys. What am I saying? I'm going to end there. I'm not on a roll. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you soon.